And we are live. Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And no one's viewing yet. And it seems like I think only the Twitch stream is currently working. Oh, no. No, we've now flicked onto YouTube. Yay! Most of our audience is over on YouTube. But when it comes to streams, if no one shows up over at Brothers Crane, because we're going to get an audience from Twitch, which we're very blessed in that regard. We don't have many followers on Twitch, but those we have are great. Anyways, figured we'd have a quick chat about Dragons of Winter Night rather quickly, as we covered this book piece by piece from the beginning, where Sturm, Raceland, and Tanis have their squabbling match, and then from there they go to Tarsus, which was not a good idea. It was essentially a waste of time on what they knew would be a waste of time, because they listened to Elistan, and why the heck you would listen to him, I don't know, but I guess it was the thing to do. I know some people are going to say Elistan's the greatest, or like he's not so bad, but he's not that great. He's not that wise. He's not that special as far as clerics go. As far as clerics go, Goldmoon and Chrysania are more important, which it's a fascinating factor in the War of the Lance that the women are the more interesting and more important clerics. That being said, inversely, the male mages are more interesting and more important. And you have, of course, the warriors, who are the majority, and because the mages and the clerics are supposed to be like the force sensitives, and so they should be the minority, which this has always been how it is. Thank heavens there's no Nick Filoni over in Dragonlance to wreck everything. But excuse me. But that said, Winter Night starts on a fairly, I don't know how to word it. The characters are not exactly in sync with each other. Tanis and Laurana are squabbling. Tanis is jealous of Laurana. Laurana is being childish as usual. Gilthanas is annoyed because Tanis is getting the hots for his sister again, and this disturbs Gilthanas, who's an overprotective older brother. He is. It doesn't make him a weirdo or a whack job, as, well, to be quite blunt, Dragonlance Saga's once called him, which, while I like Dragonlance Saga, I also think I don't understand his point about Gilthanas. Gilthanas is simply not keen to have his sister deflowered before she's married, which, given the time period and the culture, is to be expected, as this is supposed to be set in a primordial world. And traditionally, you did not want... the idea was that women were precious things, and you're not to let them, get deflowered so easily. So, yeah. But on the other hand, I'm actually going to make a weird argument and say Gilthanas was not in the right, on the other hand, as Tanis is... If you can't trust Tanis with Laurana, who can you trust? Because Tanis is very trustworthy where Laurana is concerned, and where women in general are concerned, because Tanis is, let's be honest, chivalrous. He does have a chivalrous side to him. The Kichiara thing notwithstanding, because that's different. That's essentially his girlfriend. Like,
that's its own beast.
Yeah, but that's essentially his girlfriend.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with him having a certain kind of relationship with her. Although the fact that Kichiara is a different can of worms. And hello and welcome to those who have joined us, as we have 2 or 3 people here, thank heavens. and I'm surprised that's actually pretty good for us. Um, Especially so early in a stream. So welcome. And we do have before the stream 18 coins who asked us how we're doing. How are you?
Oh, doing good.
Other than having injured my arm because puppy, and he pretty much smashed my arm on a plank of wood, and kept pulling and twisting my arm. So other than that, I'm good. Although had he kept pulling, I might have wanted to stop by for X-rays, but it's more aching. So thankfully he stopped, thanks to you, and I managed to pull my arm away. That said, with Winter Night, you have Sturm, who's out of sync with just about the entire team because he's battling with his own internal struggle. And we have Ryan Milky 14, just listening to you and lurking, sending love from Scotland, UK. Oh, well, we're going to send love right back because honestly, Scotland is probably tied with France as the greatest European or Western nation on earth, period, as far as I'm concerned, because, well, you look at Scottish culture, literature. Actually, let me pull up. I finally pulled this back out, so I'll be working on my translations for the Bruce poem soon again, because I'm translating it out of Scots and into English and French, which is a tiresome process because I'm not a native Scots speaker, and yet it's so exciting to look at the linguistics and the history of the words and the etymology with this epic poem. And we're also almost done the Mark Twain book club over on the History Corner. So pretty soon we're going to have a history book club podcast, which includes Dan, as well as Samwise, of course, which is going to be Robert the Bruce by Nigel Tranter. So that's all of our Scottish love right there. So Ryan Milky, you're very welcome here, as always. And so, yes, much love is sent back to the land of the Highlands. And if you're in the lowlands, there's much love for there too, because after all, that's where the MacAlpins and the Stewarts reigned for so very long. Anyways, Sturm is out of sync with the party in general, I think. Actually, he seems to be out of sync for most of the novel because Sturm, it's weird, but at the beginning, he's desperate to prove himself, and he's keen to just, in general, maybe prove to not others, but himself, that he is a worthy knight. He wants to gain his knighthood, but more than that, he needs to validate himself in his own eyes. But as we see, he doesn't succeed. And ultimately, his death to Kitaro is almost a suicide in some ways. Psychologically, it's him just deciding he doesn't want to live anymore. And so he goes to, essentially, the plan didn't need him to die the way it did per se. Well, it did, but it didn't. And Sturm, for the most part, was not open to any other alternative. Now, the situation evolved so that, yeah, what he did was the only way. But had it not evolved in that direction, I would argue he still would have chosen death because Sturm was determined to die. And it's not to bash him that I say that. It's that Sturm was broken by the end. He had lost faith in the knighthood, and that broke him. Like a sword, he shattered. But on the other hand, what makes Sturm so awesome is that he shattered Kitsiara's army, even as he was broken, so that she couldn't mount another war effort for a while because, well, Sturm outgunned and outmuscled her. Even though he only had a force of a couple of, 100 against her tens of thousands and her dragons. Like, how do you even... Well, Kitsiara basically seized defeat from the jaws of victory. certain victory. And so one could almost name her Marcus Antonius simply for somehow pulling that one off. As Marcus Antonius, despite being a brilliant general at the Battle of Philippi, a few other times managed to, when victory was assured, find his way towards defeat. And sorry, the dog's joining us because he's being a puppy. But anyways, as for the character that I think really interests people, Raceland, his journey is in this book is almost more a how do I word it? It's almost more in the background. Like it's because the Sturm character development, the Sturm journey is the one that takes pride of place. Like Sturm is almost a main character of Winter Night, arguably, because it's his journey that really matters and that defines Winter Night. Autumn Twilight, I'm not, well, Gold Moon would be the main character, but it's, at times she shines in the book really well. Then at other times, yeah, they went full Mary Sue. We're not going to lie. But ultimately, I would argue Gold Moon was a fantastic character in that first book. Like a few scenes aside, just the whole dragon thing, the black dragon thing, and the Verminard thing aside, Gold Moon shines in Autumn Twilight. In Winter Night, it's much more about Sturm. Spring Dawning is pretty much about Lorana. And she doesn't shine as much. But arguably, Tanis and Raceland really shine in that book. And so does Caramon to an extent. I really like Caramon in there. But Winter Night sees Raceland still kept as a secondary character. It's a role he would maintain for a bit. And what's interesting about Raceland Magier in this book is that he's moving steadily away from the party. In Autumn Twilight, he was the most loyal party member. He was the one who was going to stick with the party no matter what, even though they wanted to kill him. And he tried. But the trouble is, at the end of the first book, when he goes missing at one point and they threaten him and decide, well, you're guilty, even though we know Eben is guilty. Like all the evidence points to Eben. Eben is certified to be the guilty party. But they're determined to accuse, in some cases, Gilthanas. And Gilthanas admitted, I was following the mage, which he was. And Gilthanas had good reason to suspect Raceland because he doesn't really know him. And on the other hand, Raceland rebuts when suspicion turns to him. You're not even going to believe me. You're just going to threaten me anyways. I don't care. Decide what you want. If you're going to stick a sword in my belly, whatever. At this point, I'm done with you guys. I'm done defending myself and trying to prove my loyalty. I'm just going to go rest. You guys decide whether or not you're going to kill me this time. They choose not to. And what happens is they determine that, well, the case can't be solved, so they're going to carry on, even though they know Eben's the traitor, which Sturm and Tanis later go, well, turns out he's the traitor like we thought. Because we realized he's the real traitor. Eben is a slick guy. He's clever. He's silken-tongued. But the party still realized on some level he's guilty. They were just determined to suspect others due to prejudices. That said, arguably, the thing with Raceland is that at the start of Winter Night, in the dream, before the dream, Raceland is acting normal for the most part. Like, he's acting like a loyal party member, which he is. And he's also the funniest character because, honestly, like when they're trapped under the house, I just love how you have, I think it was Tika who made this stupid suggestion. Well, why don't we just cry out for aid? Because, they're going over all the ways they could die, and you have Raceland. Okay, let's add the Draconians and the cleanup crew of the enemy army to the west. And while Caramon treats Raceland like he's being overly mean, because Caramon hasn't slept with Tika yet, but arguably in previous Magier stories, in particular the brothers Magier, had Caramon already slept with her, he would have taken Raceland's side in the argument. And I make this statement about Caramon because I've read the Magier books and I really love them. But Caramon does have that one-track mind. Later, though, he does fall in love with Tika, but arguably he's not yet in love with her. And but arguably at the same time, Raceland is putting her in her place because it was a stupid idea and suggestion. But that said, Tika is a character of wasted potential. She doesn't have a role beyond taking her clothes off in Winter Night, sadly. And if it sounds like I'm doing nothing but whining, it's just that when it comes to Winter Night, Laurana, I actually like her portrayal. Okay, so I'll actually praise Laurana. She's really well portrayed. I love Laurana in Winter Night. Laurana is a character who was never better portrayed than in Autumn Twilight and Winter Night. She's just perfect in those two books. I really like her in them. It's why I'm so disappointed with, to an extent, some of her decisions in Spring Dawning. We've gone over it in countless streams and videos, and we're probably going to have to go over it again in the Spring Dawning podcast. But overall, in Autumn Twilight and Winter Night, outside maybe some possibilities with Ellie Stan, which you may or may not interject that into the literature. That's where it's almost more the reader. But on the other hand, I think that there's certain implications in the writing. But on the other hand, just that there's a flirtation going, nothing more. But even with that, on some level, one has to bear in mind Laurana makes some good points along the journey. And Laurana, Ellie Stan does need some backup and some help. Arguably, it'd be better for Goldmoon to help him because she's the cleric. But Laurana volunteers, and maybe Laurana on some level did need that assist, did need an apprenticeship of sorts. And arguably, later in Winter Night, Ellie Stan does a fantastic job advising Laurana at quite a few points, and he tries to act as a mediator with Solosterin and whatnot. It's just that Solosterin, there's no negotiating with, there's no mediating. Ellie Stan is just thinking, okay, maybe I can get this moron to kind of return to the true faith, and then maybe he won't do something stupid like genocide for 5 minutes or slavery for 5 minutes or try to start a war of Salamnia for 5 minutes. Maybe I can talk some sense into him, which Ellie Stan should get a lot of credit for that.
Maybe more 2 minutes would be feasible, but
well, okay, fine. But either way, Ellie Stan set himself an impossible task. He should get a lot of credit for that. But the problem is, Slorosterin's other advisor is Porthios, the worst elf to ever live in Dragonlance. And if I'm harsh on him, it's because Porthios is a moron.
Because it's Porpheus.
Yeah, because the first thing that the Qualinesti nobles in exile and government in exile needs to do is start a war with the Sylvanesti and the Kagonesti. And then the next thing they need to do is start a war of Salamnia, which after the war with the Sylvanesti is over, which is just like, what are you doing, man?
Why not?
But I actually think maybe to an extent, it should have come up to a fight at the White Council, because Lord Gunther, like, maybe the best thing for the Qualinesti was for the Speaker of the Sun and his son to be just put down, because they're basically guilty of treason at this point against their people and dereliction of duty. They abandoned Qualinesti. Like, here's the thing. Many of the Sylvanesti nobles were sent, actually many of the people were sent out from Sylvanesti, but Lorak and Alhana did not abandon their duty. they decide to go down with the ship, which you can say that's being foolish, but on the other hand, there's an ability to it.
Yeah.
And it's just that Lorak saw it as his duty and his oaths bind him to the Sylvanesti and to the land. And essentially, his decision is to an extent the same that Sturm makes. Well, we need a diversion to slow down the enemy army and the dragons. The diversion will be me, the leader. The problem is Lorak vastly overestimated his own power and ability to manage the dragon orb, which didn't go down very well.
Yeah.
Alhana, on the other hand, saw it as, I have to stay with my father. Then I have to rescue my dad, which... Is there even a nobler character than Alhana in this trilogy?
She should have been a regular. She should have been a member.
Like, I really have to admit, her story is moving, heartbreaking, and yet, Dan, is there a single character who's more noble and pious than her? In just their, like, you look at her motivation, what she just wanted to help her dad, and look what she did, and look what she accomplished, and how far she was willing to go for it.
Yeah.
Like, Alhana is just such a great character. Really an aspirational figure for any young lady. I'm just saying, because, wow. And I'm a sucker for stories about a father and their kids. And I have to admit, Alhana's bond with Lorak, I may think is an imbecile, but on the other hand, I think Lorak is also one of the most heartbreaking and moving figures. And while I think he was an idiot for even thinking he could manage the dragon orb, on the other hand, his sheer passion for his people and love for them is moving. And it's just, yeah. So the thing is, the Sylvanesti royal family did not abandon their duty. They're not like the Qualinesti speaker and his heir, because those two just decided, look, our people are needing us to fight back and lead them against an invading army. Well, better run. And they abandoned their people. What the heck are you doing? And because there's not enough Qualinesti over in Urgoth for, for that to be all the Qualinesti. Not to mention, we know Verminard's army that advanced into Qualinesti was annihilated, which means there were Qualinesti fighting. And so, because the army never comes back and is not a factor at any later point, which suggests the Qualinesti people did away with it, probably with guerrilla tactics. So if the army was never really a problem, it's because the real problem was the dragons. But the dragons were taken off the table thanks to the companions, or the heroes of the Lance, which kudos to them. In particular, credit should go to the likes of Goldmoon, Sturm, Tanis, and Raceland, because, as well as, of course, a certain beautiful elderly dragon who gave her life for her children. Oh my gosh, that character is so tragic. But, we've got Epic Kingdom here. Hello. Hope you're well, Epic Kingdom. Hope you don't mind that this is a Dragonlance stream rather than a Tolkien one. I know you're more of a Tolkien guy. And hopefully, maybe I should, I don't know. I believe he knows about Brothers Artist, so it should all be good. I can't wait for Hobbit Day, because there's some exciting stuff that's going to happen there because of the playlist, which an elf friend will be heading up, which is good, pretty cool. She's a great pal to have and a really good YouTuber. But anyways, as for who are we at? Oh, right, we were talking about dereliction of duty and treason. Yeah, that's a depressing topic. But on the other hand, the other thing I'd argue that it's a form of treason is against the philosophy of qualinesty. And the philosophy of qualinesty was that everyone was kind of open, was welcome for the most part. Among humans willing to assimilate to the elvish culture of qualinesty were welcome. Half elves were welcome, and Kagornesty were welcome. It's just everybody had to be willing to assimilate culturally to the qualinesty ways. And in time, over the millennia, everybody basically got ethnically assimilated into the qualinesty elvish race, which made the qualinesty a rather different elvish breed than the Sylvanesti. And ultimately, I think they were in some ways better and more, I don't know how to describe it, but they're slightly more resilient culturally than the Sylvanesti because they didn't just cut themselves off from the rest of the world. On the other hand, they did regard their own culture as very important to preserve. So they had a good middle ground, which that's what you want. There was cultural interactions with the outside world, and yet there was a focus on preserving what they previously had. Arguably ruling rather like Fingal or better yet, Gilgalad was for a long time, up until Solostran became ruler. But Solostran basically decided he wanted to rule absolutely and more like the Sylvanesti. He modeled his government after the Sylvanesti and basically tied himself as much to them and the king priest as possible. And then later just said, well, I guess we'll just become Sylvanesti, light. And Kifkanon never intended for his nation to become like that. And neither did his immediate successors. So what Solosterin and Portheos did is a betrayal of the Qualinesti people as well, because the people don't believe in their garbage. Because the Qualinesti, if you will remember, in the Soulforge novel, there are Qualinesti who come and go from Solus. It's mentioned. And the fact that Gilthanas has friends like Theoros and other humans shows that some of the Qualinesti, have human friends. And the fact that Tika, for example, reacts like, oh, look, Qualinesti, whatever, when they walk into the Inn of the Last Home in Autumn Twilight shows that they're a regular occurrence. So, yeah, I don't have much fondness for the two dunces. But it's interesting because on the Solamnica end of things, it's the first time we are introduced to Lord Gunther in person. Because all we've heard is the occasional talk from Sturm, who talks him up. And as a fan, you kind of go, okay, what's he going to be like? Is he going to just be another version of Sturm? But actually what we see is someone who's politically savvy, who's very smart and clever, and yet is honorable. Like, he's more like Mufasa in a lot of ways. And he's just such a great character. And I think that it would have been nice had we seen Lord Gunther, well, more of him. I'd like to see another novel with him because he's such a great character. He was a character whom he served as a father archetype to Sturm. And honestly, the farewell scene between him and Sturm, and the fact that he holds Sturm when Sturm is crying, is honestly one of the most moving scenes and heartbreaking ones. I think Lord Gunther ranks in my top 5 favorite characters of the era of the Lance.
For good reason.
Honestly, Lord Gunther is such a great character. Maybe he should have gotten his own book at some point.
Just thinking that.
Or maybe one of his sons, because he's got like 3 or 4 kids. Why not give him a novel or something? Or maybe even make one of his kids a comic book hero, like a Kyle Katarn type thing. I know there's Riva. She's a great character. She's perfect. But, well, she's another perfect hero, one of the Lance type of character. There are a few near perfect characters like that, like Chrysania. Goldman, I didn't mind too much, although I whine a lot about the Mary Sue moments. But Riva's kind of the female heroine of the Lance par excellence. And maybe we could, it would have been great had we seen one of Gunther's sons in action, just to see a regular Knight of Salamnia. Because Sturm's kind of, how do I put it? Sturm's a little bit of an odd case. He's very odd because he's not been raised in Salamnia. So it might have been interesting to see a different kind of Salamnic Knight. That said, I think that, on the other hand, the adventure to take the Dragon Orb, that great nightmare test, which is pretty freaky, is one of the most fascinating parts of the novel. It's superb. It's just superb. Although, arguably, the only part that doesn't work is, well, for one thing, there's the Tika thing, which, whatever. And kind of the Gold Moon thing. The problem with the Nightmare phase is that this is an argument in favor of the death of Riverwind back in Autumn Twilight, because there's just nothing to do with them. The problem is their story is basically over by the end of Autumn Twilight. If you had written them out at the end of Autumn Twilight and just said, yeah, they're staying with the refugee camp in Thorbarden, nobody would even notice their absence. Nobody would care. And the story of Winter Night and Spring Dawning would not be different. It'd be the exact same story. And I actually hate that because, I don't know, I want to see more of Gold Moon. Like, have her interject. Like in the first book, she would have interjected, and she often inserted herself into a lot of conversations. And she proved herself basically to have the same personality as Aurora Monroe, who's a great X-Woman character. But then in Autumn Twilight, it's like, well, we don't need this character. Punt to the background with you. And she never interjects. She's a wallflower now. I don't know why, but it's like there's nothing to do with the character. Now,
It's just sideline, like Aurora Monroe.
Yeah, sadly, they always sideline Aurora.
Yeah.
Even though, no offense, but she's arguably the most interesting X-Men character from the original 5 and the second generation, alongside Nightcrawler.
Indeed.
No offense, but I understand Wolverine and Cyclops are more popular, but they're just boring compared to Aurora and Nightcrawler. I'd rate them as the third most interesting character. Well, actually, fourth most interesting. It goes Aurora / Kurt. Then you have Alex and Polaris. Then you have Jean. Then you have Scott and Wolverine. Those two are way less interesting than, those I mentioned. Oh, you know what? Actually, Magneto is tied with Aurora and Kurt, with Xavier tied with the second group.
Yeah.
But anyways, when I say second group, I mean the second placers. But Gold Moon was a very interesting character whom she's overshadowed by the likes of Raceland and Sturm, only because those two characters are such dynamic breakout characters. The breakout characters. But the problem with Gold Moon is that she could have been a breakout character. She really could have been. She was a contender.
But
they just wrote her out.
After her story was done,
they just said, well, done with this, Chuck. Which, no, you don't do that with a character. I think
if they really wanted to get rid of them, and if they really didn't have anything else to do with them, put them on the bus. Like you said, let them lead the human settlement.
But even that just annoys me, because Riverwind's story ended the minute he brought the companions, the heroes, up to the fallen shrine of Zaroth. His story is over there. Like, they never do anything else with Riverwind. There's nothing to do more with him. So you kill him, you axe him to develop Gold Moon and to give her a crisis of faith when the time comes against Verminard, because she doesn't make it in time to save Riverwind. Okay, so he's dead. What you then do is you pair her against Verminard, have Verminard defeat her. She then doubts her faith, And throughout Winter Night, that's her arc, with the nightmare phase just, solidifying it. And then you get to Spring Dawning when she gets to destroy the Night Lord. You get a Luke Skywalker story right there, which honestly, that would have been a great arc for her. And then you give her another book after that or something, because, Gold Moon. But I'm never going to be satisfied with what we got with her. But
because if they wanted to put her on the bus to lead the old settlement, why not just go over the humans they saved?
Yeah, the refugees.
The refugees. You could have just put her as their chieftain if you want to put her on the bus instead of her tribe, which miraculously survived.
Yeah, you can't just revive the tribe. That was a stupid decision.
That way.
But on the other hand, I think the best written parts of this book, well, is anything involving Raceland and Sturm, especially Sturm. Actually, much as I like Raceland, I'm going to run it back for my boy, Sturm. Sturm's the best written part. No, like the writing of Sturm in this book is so far and above every other character. But arguably, the Elvish stuff is also superbly written. And I don't know if this is a popular idea, but I know that Wace and Ickman came to lose all interest in Gilthanas, but I would have liked it had they written another book of Sturm or about Solamnia. And I'm not talking Dragons of Deceit. I'm talking in actual Solamnic story or epic. Because clearly they can write really good Solamnic drama. And Solamnia is the most interesting nation in Krynn, so why not give us more? But I think that the slow breaking of Sturm is one of the most tragic elements of this book. Now, Derek Crownguard contributes heavily to that because he's Derek. And Derek is one of the greatest villains of Dragonlance history. I love him as a villain, but I also despise him for what he did to Sturm. Because arguably he played a large role in breaking Sturm, in shattering him. And the sad truth of it is that Sturm in some ways was treated like a mage when the time came for him to arrive in Solamnia. He was treated like Raceland would have been. Actually, can you imagine had Raceland been in that party? Oh my gosh, that would have been funny. Because the funny thing is, you'd have had the Solamnics using that as an excuse to hate on him. Although, that said, not all Solamnics did, because the Knights of the Crown actually really, 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 really liked Sturm. Because Sturm was basically one of them. And they wanted to cling to the old ideals of the knighthood, in contrast to the older knights of the Rose and some of those of the Sword. So, and the younger or the working class knights and men at arms preferred Sturm, as said, which is the majority of the order. So that does have to be pointed out. Now, that said, I will repeat, it's obvious that the White Stone plays a role in the shattering of the Dragon Orb. Tas could not have shattered that on his own. It would not make any sense because, well, there's a limit to how much chaos stuff involves Tas. Not to mention, for the orb to be that fragile, it just makes no sense. It means the slightest of mistake could just destroy this artifact. And the fact that the magic didn't just explode outwards would also add to the nonsensicalness. But the White Stone canceling out the magic and causing it to shatter makes some degree of sense. As for the Dragonlance shattering the White Stone, I would argue this was always the White Stone's destiny, and that there's essentially a bit of the Eru Iluvatar thing with the One Ring. Like, this was always meant to happen. And arguably with Paladin present, that also, there's a bit of divine interplay there. But that aside, it's interesting that the Salamniks, who are such a huge nation and factor and force, are reduced to the role of underdogs, which is really good writing. Although, in particular with Sturm being the underdog, because in the previous book he was a jerk to Raistlin, and most of the heroes rallied around him, so that he was not the underdog. Raistlin was within the party. But then in Winter Night, Sturm kind of assumes the role of Raistlin, where he's hated, he's reviled, and he just otherwise has to deal with someone just wanting to slit his throat every 2 minutes, so that he gets to experience what it's like to be the other person. And the difference is, actually, there's almost no difference. That kind of treatment does break Raistlin in a way. Raistlin just chooses to go evil because he just goes, what's the point? I may as well. But on the other hand, I would argue Raistlin breaks. Basically, Winter Night is about how Raistlin and Sturm both break under the pressure of so much hatred. And, or at least the seeds are planted for Raistlin to break later in turn sides. Because deep down, Raistlin did love the heroes of the Lance. But it's just that the love wasn't returned. Just as Sturm loved the knighthood in its entirety, but parts of the knighthood didn't love him in return, so that shattered him.
And in a way, you could say that after that, the heroes of the Lance lost their heart and mind.
I'm just thinking about that. I guess. I don't know.
Because Sturm was very much, in a way, the heart of the team.
Maybe him and Goldmoon.
Yeah, that's fair. And Raistlin was obviously the mind of the team. But what happens when you lose the heart and the mind?
Goldmoon's written out. She doesn't exist. For all intents and purposes, sadly. Sturm's dead. Raistlin, at the beginning of Spring Dawning, is gone. He's just exit stage left, and he's not interested in remaining one of the heroes because too many betrayals. Yeah, okay, fair. I have to concede that one. Sturm, though, is like at the end of the book, he shatters, and the bromance that had sprung between him and Laurana is one of the most moving relationships. And I only wish all Hannah had been present, because the goodbye scene would have been heart-wrenching. I don't think she would have realized what Sturm was up to, because denial would have kicked in. That said, it would have been interesting having her bear witness to Laurana and Tass try to utilize the Dragon Orb. Although it would make more sense for Gilthanas to kind of make an attempt, considering, well, Gilthanas wasn't there. So that's a problem. He's rallying the dragons. So never mind. That would not make any sense. Actually, in a way, they needed another mage character present. But on the other hand, all that Laurana and Tass did was basically using like only a fragment of the power of the Dragon Orb. They didn't use the whole darn thing. They weren't trying to. They understood what Lorak didn't, that they could not master this thing. So maybe Alhana helping them would have been interesting as well. That said, Sturm's death is the most heart-wrenching part of this book. This is how you write off. This is how you kill off a character, arguably. To any writers who listen, this is how you kill one off. What George R. R. Martin never understood was how to do it right and how to give it weight. Just killing every character willy-nilly because you feel like it, that's not good writing. And even he admitted, whoops, I wrote myself into a corner. I killed off several characters I need. Well, duh.
What were you thinking?
Well,
wait.
yeah, he just wanted to subvert and shock and awe. Which the problem with that is, well, you put yourself into a corner.
A long-term named character can be just killed off casually.
Yeah, but on the other hand, with Sturm, this is how you do it, and Sturm ends up honestly going from in Autumn Twilight, written as a bit of a jerk, to now you saw his perspective, and I find he's the most endearing character. Like, just I love his honor. Even in Autumn Twilight, I really love his honor, but I have to concede to some fans. He does have some jerk moments, but I just love him too much. And honestly, his death to Kitiara is just tragic. And of course, you have, meanwhile, Tannis having spent the night with Kitiara, which was not wise. We'll get into that in next week's video because, yeah, we go for a little rant. Everyone can see that coming. But the main rant involves other stuff too. We mostly get for the entire boat arc because why not? And honestly, I just like Spring Dawning is a book that the last third with Naraka is the most interesting part. Not that the previous parts aren't interesting; they have some great moments. I just like the Naraka bit because, well, it's the conclusion of the saga, and it's such a great conclusion for the most part. But oh man, and then of course Spring Dawning leads perfectly into Test of the Twins, which is probably my top 3 favorite Dragonlance books of all times, or top 5. It is such a great book. Well, I just can't wait to do a book club podcast of that. I really love that book. So, I don't know. I really love the interplay between Caramon and Raceland. And I really love seeing Ishtar. It's the only time I've ever liked time travel. It is the Legends trilogy. The time travel just works. It's not confusing like Flash comics. Because, like, I don't mind the Flash, but I just find
too much of the time travel.
It gives me a headache. I don't like Doctor Who. I find it impossible to get into. I can't understand it. No offense to Doctor Who fans. It's just, I don't get it. But la réalité, c'est que Dragonlance, at least with Legends Trilogy, makes it work. And they keep it really simple. They try not to make it too complicated with the time travel. But what I find too many Dragonlance campaigns and this new reboot with the Dragons of Deceit and Dragons of Fate thing, what they do wrong is that they over convolute it. They bring in too much time travel. And I don't even think Dragons of Deceit should have gotten into time travel. Heck, I didn't even think second generation of TAS should have gotten into that because it's just, doing it once was fine, doing it more, no, please, let's stop. Because, it doesn't work. But that said, Legends Trilogy works really well. It's a really, really, really good trilogy. Oh man, I loved curling up on the couch and reading it when I was a kid. Such a great series. Anyways, hope everyone enjoyed it. This was also opened up in case people had questions, which doesn't seem to have happened, which is quite all right. We didn't get too many people, and I think, like with Ryan Milkey, they're just listening and lurking and maybe doing other stuff, which is
and sometimes fine. Streams are good for that. Just
like,
listening in the background while you're washing dishes.
Yeah. Stephanie Frederick has done that with our streams. On the other hand, heck, I've basically done that with In Deep Geek, and a great Tolkien and Westeros channel. Typically, I usually draw. So I used to draw. I occasionally do history studies or writing or read something else while listening to his voice. He's just got such a great voice. I also like doing that with Dork Lord's Girl Next Gondor and even World of Conan and Grimdark videos and Red Book stuff. Like when I'm writing, I typically flick them on. They have such great voices. I wish I had a great voice like some of those guys when I in Tolkien lore, and some of them are so knowledgeable. It's you feel smarter listening to them. Hello, Aries Aurelian. Glad to see you. We're about to sign off, ironically, because I'm tired. I didn't sleep almost at all last night.
No, after the stream last night.
Yeah. And I think we discussed Winter Night kind of into the pavement.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to publish next week's video. And I wonder how the poll is going, because I put up a poll. Oh, who keeps ordering that bookshelf behind you guys? Oh, the bookshelves are, because this is basically my room. Yeah. Now, a lot of the books are a little out of order because I packed a whole bunch in some boxes right behind me. Because, well, yeah, I have to go back to college, and then I have to, for a quick certificate for like a month and a half or so, then I'm moving. But all the books are going to be coming with me over time. And, but most of the books, like up top, right over there, is a bunch of art and mythology books. Then you have a bunch of history textbooks on the two lower shelves. Well, actually, you have art and history over in Egyptian literature and Mesopotamian history there. The mythology is right here, actually. The mythology is right here. And then there's a bunch of more mythology. Then there's all sorts of guidebooks and how to draw, how to do programming, anatomy, Shakespeare. And in the hidden part, there's a lot of Shakespeare poetry books, historic fiction stuff, Jack London. I love Jack London. And we have I have another bookshelf there with some more history, some law books, mostly of Anglo-Saxon legal history, some Frankish stuff like that as well, because I love the Franks, le français. And then there's a bunch of Japanese literature and some Japanese history and some Mesoamerican and Chinese history. Oh, interesting. Wow. Yeah. I've got books pouring out of the shelves. In the other room, there's another room attached to this one, which is, I don't know why there was two rooms attached to each other with this place. I keep a bunch of these. I had almost every Star Wars novel from 1976 up to 2007, and they're all over there. I don't read them anymore for some reason, except the occasional Jedi Apprentice with Dan. But I stopped for a while because, had other stuff to do. And there's also all my fantasy books are basically in the other room. And there's probably a few hundred, or maybe almost 100 of them, of all sorts, from the 80s to the 90s, novelizations of movies like Dragonheart, Dragon Slayer, and other stuff. So, yeah. I guess you've been wondering about those bookshelves for a while. Dan's got his own bookshelves all over the place. Who's your favorite character in the Dragonlance saga? Okay, that I kind of consider that there's different eras. So I'll say for overall, Huma Dragonbane, because he's just I love him. Now what's funny is that I'm not always the aspirational hero type. I don't think I am. I mean, I really like, you look at Superman and whatnot. I really like him, but I actually prefer Kyle Rayner. I guess he's kind of aspirational. Same with Hal Jordan. So Huma comes as a surprise, but like, I guess I like the Knight in Shining Armor. But on the other hand, I do like Conan a lot with just how much of a blood knight he is. So I don't know, but Huma. Then I think for the main era, it might be Stern Brightblade. I don't know. I guess I'm a sucker for. It's just Roland. Like, it's that old medieval literature. Love for that coming out. But how about you?
Sturm is a good character. I know I like Tass.
Good choice. Favorite character.
overall, I think it'd have to be Fizzban the Fabulous.
I love Fizzbang. He's such a great. I love Paladin overall. Like, the thing about Paladin is that he has to rank in like everyone's top 5 or something. Not it's not a must, but like if you read like the Legend of Huma, he's more like a omniscient force, almost like how do I word it? He's more like a Ruluvatar in Lord of the Rings. But on the other hand, when Huma at the end goes like, Paladin, I need your help. Paladin readily hands it to him and helps him just trounce Takhisis. But then in the King Priest saga, he actually appears to, and he's appeared in other books. He's always kind and gentle and funny. But then you see his anger in the King Priest saga. And then you've got him in the original era. And even in the comics, you see him at a few points. He has such a different set of appearances, aspects, and whatnot, so that he's just one of the most complex characters of all times.
And the fact that he's only truly hated someone and would never forgive him once.
Fair enough. Face green smiling. Okay, so Ares, what's your favorite character from the Dragonlance saga? And while we're waiting for him to type up his response, Fizzban the Fabulous, because he's just such a common character.
It's Paladin essentially trolling everyone, and honestly, with all of the somberness, all of the seriousness, all of the weight on all of these characters' shoulders, having someone that lightens the mood is actually really good.
Yeah, and at the same time, some of his serious moments, he gives weight to the story. So like he never undermines the story because how do I put it? His serious moments in On Twilight, he did Dawn d'Issoile de Winter Night, when he can, like when he scolds the council of the Whitestone Council, he does it with such weight, and you see a hint of the steel, I guess you'd say. And at the end of Spring Dawning, he gives a great monologue about the nature of the forces of light and darkness, the King Priest, and how everything turned out the way it did. And it's such a great monologue. Like, trust me, by the end of Spring Dawning, you're probably going to love Paladin even more. And in the Legends trilogy, he's trying to, like, he goes back into the background, just to spoil a little for you, Dan, and for those who haven't read Legends, but he mostly operates by giving, I guess you could say, white magic to Chrysania, who always, like, he never denies her a single clerical ability, which elevates her to uber levels, even when she's going to confront Takhisis. And Paladin agrees to all this, not to destroy Takhisis, but if you think about how he expresses at the end of Spring Dawning affection for Raceland, and how he even Raceland and him basically call each other friend, so that they're like, well, he's my true friend. You get there almost a father figure towards Raceland, where he's like, I'm going to give Chrysania full support. She's basically my chosen, or like, if she's a daughter of Paladin, like in the Judeo-Christian sense, like the daughter of, or like all people are children of God, so to speak, to use that kind of phraseology in philosophy, which this story is in a Judeo-Christian context, because, well, it's written by Americans who come from a Judeo-Christian heritage. the thing about Paladin is that he's offering his protection in that way to Chrysania, but Raceland is genuinely his friend. And he has a paternalistic streak with Raceland. So what he's trying to do is redeem Raceland through Chrysania and through the power of, as the hippies would put it, love. So to just là, you get such a great, how do I put it? You get such a depth of character. And he appears and acts through other characters and just in such a way that's always benevolent and always fascinating. And with such wisdom and affection and goodness. Like Paladin is probably in terms of fantasy fiction, my favorite deity. He's just such a great character. So I definitely have to say, like, you choosing him as your favorite character, like, I think you're only going to love him all the more by the end of the Legends trilogy, and even the Legend of Huma, because he's, even when he's not present, he's still present. Like, it's so well written when it comes to Richard Knack and Weiss and Hickman, because they do such a great job with Paladin. The dog's shifting, wanting his head on your foot. So hope that answers your question, Aries Aurelian. And if there's no more, that might be it. Like I said, I'm exhausted. Oh, smooth. Okay, no problem. And if you want, you can leave in the comment section, or if you're fast enough here in the chat, your favorite Dragonlance characters. I'd be much obliged. So I'm very curious. Because part of the whole thing with building up a channel is to have an interaction with people. And yeah, so, and you know what? There should be interplay between the YouTuber and the audience. And there should be a certain measure of not just loyalty, but like on our part as a YouTuber to our audience. I don't think the YouTuber should demand loyalty from the audience, because it's a bit like customer service. But on the other hand, I think that, you know, like, we need to keep up the interplay with our audience, because if we try to become aloof from our audience, what the heck are you doing? I don't know if that's a weird philosophy here on YouTube or something. I don't know. It's just Dan and I have worked customer service before, and we were basically taught customers always right. Like, you have to be polite towards them. And yeah. But on the other hand, like, it's easy to be polite on YouTube for the most part, because people are generally really nice to us. So we've been pretty lucky that way.
Yeah.
We've run into one or two jerks, but for the most part, people have been champs. We've been really blessed that way. I'm just going to check the community vote, how that's coming along. So we've gotten 3 votes, just to reveal to everyone. We did put up a poll, and this poll was in regards to the Brothers Crin, not the other side channels we're starting to build up for, like Tolkien, Howard stuff, which, as you guys have seen, we're still posting the new videos here, even as we post them over the air or whatever. Sometimes they're either a week behind or a week ahead. It just happens. But new videos inevitably always appear here as well. It's just mostly older videos have been migrated. But we want to ask, in the interest of producing more content here, I'm just wondering if people would be interested, because Dan was pushing for a bit for a D&D horror stories Reddit stuff, because you're interested in that.
Yeah, and I actually enjoy thinking about it, what goes on, what kind of DMs or players to avoid, or even how to adapt some of the eccentricities of some players who might be toxic, in how to handle them to make them more cohesive with the group.
Well,
or if you have a biased writer.
Yeah, and I think that like another thing we want to do. Well, dog scared me there. I think that with a lot of content being moved elsewhere, and some stuff I don't really want to have here. No offense, like the Rings of Power stuff, I'm not interested in posting here because you posted once. I don't want to post it anymore. I don't really like the topic because it's such a there's so much squabbling over it. I'd rather just do it on Brothers Arda, leave it there, or Quelqu'un Traduction, the French channel, and just leave it there. But then there's stuff like there's some content I would prefer to leave on some of the other channels. I'm thinking the Riddle of Steel podcast of the Cull, the Conqueror movie might be better suited alongside the Queen Sonia reviews for Brothers Hiborian. And yeah, we'll continue a lot of I'd rather more of the Fury videos and some of the good book club videos. Like we're about to do A Witch Shall Be Born. But we're also going to be doing Siege of the Black Citadel, the new Chuck Dixon book, because I managed to get my hands on on it online. Someone was kind enough to share it with me. And I think that, like Siege of the Black Citadel, I don't see the point in posting on Brothers Grin. But A Witch Shall Be Born, I actually think, yeah, that should be on this channel. So if we're not going to, like, if some stuff, like some of the comic book reviews, I don't see the point of posting here. And some of the movie content, which people don't seem terribly interested here on Brothers Grin. No offense to people, but over on Brothers Hiborian, people are interested in it. So it makes more sense to post it over there and occasionally put it in the community tab here. But the book clubs of Conan, for example, people are interested here. So we should keep like the Robert E. Howard written stuff here. You have, of course, the Zelda stuff people are still interested in. So we got to keep posting the Zelda stuff. But I'm thinking any Tears of the Kingdom content should maybe be kept to Brothers Hyrule. Obviously, people are interested in the Chronicles of the First Wars, so it should be posted on both channels. We don't have any other Warcraft stuff outside the Kingdom stuff, which actually that stuff maybe should be put on both channels.
Maybe.
Tolkien obviously needs to be on both channels. It's just it takes a lot longer to produce a Tolkien video. We have the next Silmarillion video, I think, recorded, but it's just like 40 minutes of discussion, so that has to be edited. So much. But of course, this means that in between, like some weeks might go without content to an extent because the book clubs take so long to edit because we talk for like an hour sometimes an hour and a half, and I have to trim that all down. I have to edit out the stutters because we do talk with a stutter, and I have to make sure the audio is not too terrible. We don't have the best audio, but like we got to fix that. There's so much to fix, and I also want to work on providing an intro, a Dragonlance intro, because we have such an intro for Conan stuff. We have such an intro for Tolkien. Shouldn't Dragonlance and D&D stuff have an intro?
Yeah.
So I want to work on that at some point. But in the meantime, we do need some other content because we promised people Forgotten Realms stuff. We have to get into Forgotten Realms content. It's just life got in the way for a bit. And you know what? I've really wanted to touch on kobolds and fairies in D&D and fairy mythology. I really want to get into that, but we've not touched on it, which that annoys me. So this means because we put it to a vote, we have to actually do it if it comes out as a yes. And you know what? The idea of opening up the player's handbooks of several different editions of either Pathfinder 3.5 or even down the road, 5th edition, because 5th edition had some decent lore. And just comparing or doing almost a book club, just screenshotting parts of it and then discussing it and reading it along and then analyzing it. I think that would be an interesting thing to do. I would really like to do that. I really want to do content like that. And this would mean that a lot of Brothers Grimm would then be, we'd be getting into the expanded D&D stuff, not just Dragonlance. And in between, the weeks where the book clubs are taking up time. Now, I do want to get into the gods and the artifacts of Dragonlance, but this would also mean that down the road we have to touch upon the really exciting part, the Dragonlance handbooks, which would be fun. I love those things. So yeah, but I also figured that this is something that has to be pitched to the audience, because it would mean Brothers Grimm would kind of lean more towards being the Crinnish element, the D&D stuff. And now the channel's going to remain the same. Like, of course, we have to post the book clubs of Conan, the Silmarillion, the Kingdom stuff for Warcraft. We have to continue posting the Zelda stuff. But we would just be doing added extra D&D stuff, which honestly, I really want to do that stuff. Like,
I'm looking forward to things,
but I kind of think that this is something we do need to consult with the audience as it affects you guys, and gals,
and it would be something different than what we usually do, and we don't want to alienate our audience.
Yeah. So, and this is something that does affect everyone. And you know what? It means we're getting into a bit of the expanded lore and trends and tropes of the books and whatnot. So, but on the other hand, I don't really like reaction videos and whatnot. So the Reddit stuff will be kind of like that. But that's where Dan's been wanting that. So, and I don't know anything about D&D Reddit. So, that's where Dan and I would basically debate D&D and game mastering or dungeon mastering, playing D&D and whatnot. And who knows, maybe people will like that. So, yeah. On the other hand, touching on fairy mythology and whatnot, I want to touch on fairy mythology, like classic Irish ideas of fairies and whatnot, because I've got a friend who's really interested in that, Beth, and she's from Southern Ontario down there, and her and our friend Max are really into that, and I kind of want to discuss with them fairy mythology as it pertains to D&D and Tolkien, as there's a lot of that could be really interesting to compare, contrast, discuss, and whatnot. People would learn a lot about traditional mythology, but also get to see the D&D and the Tolkienian stuff, because I really want to discuss like the Gary Gygax and Tolkien take on it, because Gygax himself was a genius and was such a beautiful creator of fantasy. He really pioneered a lot of the fantasy genre. And I also want to analyze kobolds and gnolls and those lesser known races, and get into D&D and Dragonlance races and the nations and whatnot. I really want to get into that stuff. So yeah, that's part of the reason why the poll's been put up. It affects everyone, even the non-D&D audience. And yeah, I hope people don't mind. But as said, what I might do is some of these extra D&D videos, I'm thinking I might try to find, if we end up with, let's say, the Dragonlance Book Club podcast finished that week, and we have this other video already ready. We just posted in the same week, but maybe one is posted like on Tuesday and the other is on Friday. I'm just spitballing there. And that might be how it works.
Maybe.
I don't know. But I want, like, part of the taking more time to make videos is that we have better quality stuff, but also giving videos time to breathe. And so far, it's been good for the channel, and it's also good for the smaller channels. So yeah, hope everyone wasn't too bored, especially near the end as I'm discussing the channel, because the state of the channel thing. I don't think it should just be kept to community tabs, as not everyone seems to be too interested in that stuff. But you know what? It's something that merits discussion in the live stream or in video format. Not that this means I'm going to be going back to the old schedule of burning myself out. No. Let's say I think I've got the Rohan stuff, and we have, what was it? I think we have a Conan video recorded. I have to edit them after I deal with the Dragonlance video. After that, I have a Rohan video. We have a Silmarillion video, and we have a Conan video all edited, not edited, recorded. I have to edit them, and then Rohan I'm going to put together myself. Conan you tend to put together, so we'd end up putting those together and just putting them out when we can. And yeah, so do take care, everyone. Wish you all the very best. And if you're not already, don't forget to smash the subscribe button. It only helps.
On all our channels.
Well, whatever fantasy channel interests you. If you're not interested in, say, Conan, don't even bother.
That's fair.
It's fine. I get it. If you're interested in Tolkien, go smash that. Subscribe over on Brothers Arda. If you're into Conan, go subscribe to Brothers Saborian. If you're interested in Zelda, you can follow Hyrule. And same for Azeroth. But if you prefer to stay here and just stick to Brothers Kryn because it's got everything, that's fine.
Yeah.
But do smash the subscribe button and the like button. And you take care too, or Ares Aurelian. Same for the rest of our audience, such as Ryan Milky14, who's always great. And Epic Kingdom, of course. Actually, I'll probably talk to Epic Kingdom later down the road, because everybody's basically collabing for the Hobbit playlist, which comes out, let me see, next week, next Friday. Oh, shoot. Yeah, okay, good. It should work out. I should be able to, well, Hobbit playlist will have our Hobbit video, and so there will be, yeah, that should work. Anyways, sorry, my brain's too tired and fried. So yeah, smash the like button and the subscribe button, and stay awesome, everyone.